Welcome to the Gray Range Podcast. My name is David Rousseau. We're going to explore the poetry of how we live, how we learn, and how we find our way along this strange path we call life. If you are curious about people, their stories, and all things savage and wonderful, join me on the Gray Range.
Oh, I can't like this. I got a sexy voice.
Damn right.
If I
we're live now.
if I start touching myself and talking, it's okay. Just ignore me.
And when your voice comes down one octave, we're like, hello.
This is how I like to start things off. This is perfect. So welcome to another episode of the Gray Range Podcast. And today we've got Ernie Doble with us. And
Hello.
Ernie is local gentleman, business owner, and what did you say, the founder? Are you the founder of this parallel society group? Or?
Not necessarily the parallel society, the more community homesteading and preparedness, and what we would call CPP, community protection and preservation course that we had put on. But I'm not really necessarily the founder. There's a group of us that got it up and going.
Okay, awesome. And so are you local to Grand Prairie? Did you grow up here?
Yeah, I did. I grew up around here, just kind of north of here, and have a business out by Sexsmith, and
all right.
So been here my whole life. This is home to me.
So you were born in the Peace Country?
No, I was actually born in Brooks.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was a teenager when we moved up here. So
gotcha.
Brooks, it's a, you know, when I'm there, I feel a sense of home. As weird as it is, it feels just like home. But I look around like, jeepers, this is freaking ugly. I don't know why, but I look around and I just feel home.
Yeah.
But I would never live there again. Oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
You can watch your dog running away for 3 days.
Yeah, it's pretty flat down there.
It is, yeah.
Yeah, I'm the same way with, I was noting, I was born in Edson, Alberta, but I never lived there. My folks were living in Blue River, BC at the time.
Yeah.
But I have a lot of family down there, and I grew up in Jasper.
Oh, yeah.
So I've been in Grand Prairie 25 years or whatever. So this is definitely home. Kind of more and more every year. I really like living here.
Yeah.
But when I go to Jasper, it feels like home.
Yeah.
Really anywhere in the Rockies. We lived in McBride, BC, on the other side of the Rockies for a while, and then in Edson, I also feel at home there. I never lived there, but you have that kind of home feeling. I think it's just because there's lots of family.
I was born in Slave Lake, and never spent any time there. And then later in life, my dad and mom, they moved back there. My dad's job, so I by then I think it was pretty well moved out. But I went and lived there for a couple of months during the winter, and I took like one look around. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, Slave Lake is not home for me.
I could see that.
Yeah, there's not much there.
Yeah, I have this thing where whenever I travel somewhere, especially to small towns, I kind of imagine what it's like to live there.
Yeah.
And there's a few places I've been in northern Alberta where that thought has never crossed my mind. Never once wondered, what would we like to buy a house and live up in Manning? It's just, never crossed my mind.
I wouldn't make sense of that one. That would have been a hard transition for you, for Jasper to hear.
It was really small mountain town to like, I think we were 200 kids from grade 7 to 12.
Yeah.
And I went to a high school that was like 2,500 kids.
And you're still here 25 years later.
Yeah, it grew on me.
I would have went back.
Yeah,
Jasper's, oh man, it was beautiful.
And it will be again. It's a thing where the only people who could afford to live there are people that work for CN, Parks Canada, or business owners. It's a really class-based town. Either you work for the government, you own a hotel, or you work in a hotel, or there's very few small businesses and stuff like that. So this was the area at the time, late 90s, where there was a lot of growth, like today. There was a lot of opportunity. There was secondary education, post-secondary education, all that kind of stuff. So my folks kind of looked at Grand Prairie. I had an uncle that had already lived up here, was living up here at the time. So they kind of saw this as being a broader opportunity. Was it the same for you with your family? Did they come up here for work, or did they?
No, actually, my dad lost his farm during the first Trudeau freaking reign.
Oh, okay. I was wondering if you're down in Brooks, if you were farming or not.
Yeah, we were farming.
Yeah.
My dad lost his farm. He got held out 5 years out of 7 years, and interest rates were so high they couldn't even make interest only payments on the loans.
Yeah.
So he lost his farm and headed up north. He wanted a place where no irrigation, and you know, it was a big change for us. And I was 14 years old, but you know, I think it was a good change. I after we moved up here and got settled in a couple of years later, I never looked back.
Yeah, this area, once you kind of put down some roots, it's
it's got like this voodoo thing going on.
Yeah,
it just captivates you.
It does.
I've had friends of mine who've told me that people will come up to visit them, and they'll get up across the Smoky, and they'll just be like, there's something about the atmosphere changes.
Yeah,
like there's a reason that they call it the Peace Country. There's a separation, you know, from those rivers, the Wapiti or the Smoky or Little Smoky that. And we're up on this high subarctic plain, kind of where you're kind of separate from all these different geographies.
Yeah.
And it's not on the way anywhere. I always say that it's, unless you're going to Alaska, you know.
I tell people all the time, actually, this is the best place in the whole entire world to live. You've got all the, you know, oil, gas, farming, logging. You've got everything.
Yep.
There's no poisonous spiders, no snakes. Where else could you live?
I tell all my friends from the U.S., I say there's no hurricanes, there's no tornadoes,
Exactly.
there's no earthquakes, there's no mass shootings. But if you go outside for about 3 weeks in the wintertime, you'll die.
Yeah.
Oh, it hurts to breathe. It's 40 below, yeah.
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 Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think we've all got frostbite from our youth.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Still to this day.
Yeah.
One of these days I'll smarten up and stop working outside for a living. Your family comes up here. Did they take up farming again, or did they?
Yeah, we had our family farm was actually west of where I live right now in the Saddle Hills.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And my brother Shane, he bought the farm from my mom after my dad passed away, and he's still farming.
Okay.
And,
are they doing cereal crops, or are they doing cattle, or?
No, just all cereal crops. Okay. Yeah, and meat and stuff for just his own personal use, but nothing for sale. And and we bought a farm about 4 miles away from our family farm, and
nice.
That's been home.
Nice. That's a large migration. You made 4 miles away.
Yeah, exactly. I did move away for a while. I lived in the town of Sexsmith. I'm not a city boy at all, or a town boy, so
that's all right.
Yeah, too many tickets from peeing outside. I guess you can't do that in public.
Well, you can.
Everything's legal if you don't get caught.
Yeah, they'll try and stop you.
Yeah.
It depends on how nice your neighbors are.
My heart's out on the farm, so my wife, same with her. Her heart's always been on the farm, so we migrated back when this place came up for sale years and years and years ago. We were like, yeah, that's the one for us. So
nice.
Yeah, we've been there ever since. I'll probably die there.
It's a wild place, man. It's a beautiful piece of property.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, the more I live up here, the more I come to really appreciate the agricultural area, the rural areas out here, the people that live out here. I think, in the last 5 years, as almost like as the world gets bigger, it gets smaller.
Yeah.
So as we have more and more connection through social media, and you're kind of plugged into all the information in the world, at the same time, you really start to notice who's building connections locally and who's building their kind of interpersonal connections. They start to mean more, I think.
Yeah.
So you have people, especially in the rural world, where everybody's kind of distant apart. If you wanted to talk to your neighbor, you'd have to phone them. But now you've got this instant messaging and social media, and it's a lot easier for those kind of disparate large communities to kind of bring it all in and be a little bit more tight knit on, something like Rural Watch and stuff like that. I know I saw a lot of that, starting about 10 years ago. We started to see a ton of rural crime up in this area, and people were really leaning on things like Facebook to kind of say, hey, look, there's a black truck rolling up and down a road that it shouldn't be on, and stuff like that. So there's definitely some benefit there.
People are still using those mediums of exchange for like neighborhood. Like I know my wife's on the West Point or whatever, West Point Pinnacle O'Brien, like has a Facebook group where it's like, oh, watch for this, watch for that, and there's lots of shit rats out there. So social media is it's been a good platform for that, for information sharing.
Yeah, absolutely. And living on the farm, was that something that you planned on doing? Like, did you take any post-secondary education? Was it something that you planned to live there, plan that lifestyle, or was that just kind of how it played out?
I always knew I'd still be on a farm one way or another, farm or an acreage. And that's just the way it played out. I'm a mechanic.
Okay.
By trade.
Yeah.
Red Seal mechanic. And I started out in 1991 pulling wrenches. Freaking hated it. But I did it because I'm good at it. So it was just one of those things. I don't know if
it's the mark of a tradesman.
Yeah. You do something and it just clicks in your brain. It's just so easy.
Yeah.
And so I did it because I'm good at it. But I freaking always hated it.
Sure.
I like people. And so then, it was in 2005, we started a business, our own shop, me and my wife. And I liked that because I like dealing with people. I like relationship. I like building relationships with people. Yeah. So that was something that I liked, and I still was working on the vehicles for many years until we grew. And then, I had mechanics doing that. And then I was on the front counter all the time. And we've built some beautiful relationships with a lot of great people over the years. I like that. I like that interpersonal relationship. That's
yeah, for sure. I mean, in any community, you're mechanically inclined people. There's a lot of value there, especially in parts that are rural, especially in parts like northern Alberta, where having a vehicle or having anything that's engine driven is either getting you power, it's getting you water, or it's getting you groceries, right? Getting you to work. It's not an option out here that stuff works, especially in those colder months of the year when it's hard on equipment. Yeah.
Well, I think there's a lot to be said too for building those personal relationships. You're in your shop, you specialize in diesel mechanics.
In diesel, yeah.
So we live in a region where there's a demand for that.
Yeah.
And that extra level of building relationships and customer service that you're not going to get at a dealership.
Yeah.
People need that. And
exactly.
They depend on it too, right? So.
Yeah. And even our business, the whole picture of our business, I wanted to create an experience for people from the minute they walk into the shop. It's an experience. It's a beautiful, gorgeous shop.
Nice.
We've been all over America. We used to race. We built diesel race trucks at one time.
Oh, okay.
And we've been in every single diesel magazine that's out there. We got a whole wall full of our magazine articles on all the trucks that we built, plus a dragster that we built for my son that's up on the wall. And I don't know, about 30-something trophies. And so it's just kind of a story, a timeline of our company. We don't race anymore. Last event we did was in Indianapolis in 2017. We had 2 trucks down there.
Okay.
And it's just a pile of money. It's
an excellent way to spend money.
Oh, gosh, yeah. We blew up a $30,000 engine. And I'm like, I'm done.
That's enough of that.
That's enough of that. We took first place and 7th place, but it was you're the winning check, I think, was $6,000. We blew $30,000 engine up, spent $10,000 in fuel and hotel rooms.
Yep.
Yeah, it just wasn't. It's not worth it.
Diminishing returns.
Right? Yeah, absolutely. Exactly. How much joy are you really buying for that $24,000, right?
Yeah, and we did it at one time just for build the industry. Yeah, and so, but that was. Then we just kind of pulled the reins and just been diesel repair shop ever since.
Do people still come to you for that level of performance then?
Sometimes, yeah. Sometimes, yeah. It's not cheap.
Sure.
It is not cheap, man. You got to love your truck if you're going to spend that kind of money on it.
Guys up here do love their trucks.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I've had guys come in the shop, oh, man, $50,000-$60,000.
Oh, wow.
Of 900 horse daily driver.
Yep.
And, it's crazy. Absolutely crazy the amount that somebody will spend on a truck.
Can't even imagine that.
My race truck was like $140,000.
Yeah,
that was our cost to build that thing. It was insane.
Well, enough people do it that they come out of the factory with that much horse now, right? Like Dodge wouldn't do it if there wasn't any money in it.
No,
right? If there was no demand for it. Right?
The biggest one we built was so our daughter's was a 1,505 horse at the wheels.
Jeez.
And just about 3,000 foot-pounds of torque. And her boyfriend's was 2,050 horse at the wheels and 3,500 foot-pounds of torque.
shit.
Man, I remember when we got a Freightliner that had a 550 cat that was chipped at like 6 something, and we thought that was like the fastest thing on the highway, man.
Her boyfriend built his own truck, but that thing ran an 882 quarter mile in a freaking Dodge 1-ton. It's a bale wagon going down the track in 8 seconds. Like, it's crazy.
That's nuts.
So do you have you work on diesels? Do you have a preferred brand? Ford, without like getting too deep.
Oh, that's
like,
such a common question. I get those questions all the time.
Well, I'm just curious. Like, well, I guess a more accurate question would be not do you have a preference, but is there a specialty for your shop where you
is there a certain brand that we focus on? Not really.
Okay, yeah, I guess that'd be my question. Is there something that's more specific to your shop just because of the level of expertise?
No, not really. We do them. We have always kind of specialized in all of them. But you know, the common question, talk about what you just pertain to.
Yeah.
A lot of people will come in and say, well, what's the better truck to buy?
Sure.
Well, they're all junk. Every freaking one of them's junk.
Yeah.
You drive the truck that you like to drive and pick that one, because I can pick apart every single freaking truck on the road.
Yeah.
Well, this truck has got cam issues, or that truck's got transmission issues, or this other truck usually has head gasket issues. They all have issues. Right. So you got to just pick the truck you like to drive and drive it.
And would you say, does it balance out? Like they're all going to cost the same? Whatever's fucked in one brand.
As long as it's not a Ford 6-liter, it'll balance out. Those Ford 6-liters cost guys a lot of money. I made a lot of money off those trucks.
I bet.
I'm just saying, if they rolled off the line perfect, you'd be out of business.
Yeah, exactly. But then you get guys. I'm honest. If guys came in and wanted to build their horsepower up in their truck, and I knew their trucks aren't going to hold it. Mm-hmm. I'd always explain to them, it's kind of like if you got a hard-on that you really, really like and you don't want to lose this hard-on, don't fuck with it.
Yeah.
That's just simple like that. You might have to edit that out. I don't know.
I don't edit much. If it's not unethical, immoral, or illegal, it tends to stay in. So,
but it's the guys would always want to freaking build horsepower, and that's when they were starting to have problems, because if you've got a truck that the transmissions are fairly weak on, add 100 horse and they're going to be really
tear it
weak.
Apart, yeah.
Or add 200 horse, and the technology is there where it's nothing to build a 700-800 horsepower truck right now, real fast, real easy, and you're going to tear stuff up with that. So, and guys, usually the way guys are, if it's got freaking power to smoke them tires from light to light, that's exactly what they're going to do.
That's what they're looking for. And that thrill never wears off. They're rolling coal. Okay, follow-up question then. Mm-hmm. If you had to put some little girl in a truck where you just didn't want to see her again because you just wanted her to sit in a reliable truck that ran every day and was good, is there what's the year, make, and model? You just take some random little girl who just doesn't know anything about trucks.
You want her in a truck that you know is going to get from one side of Canada.
Yeah, you never have to worry about her.
Ford 6.7.
Okay.
Or the 15 and up, nothing earlier than that, because then they had turbo issues. Or an old Dodge 12 valve, or even the early common rail 03, 04, or 03 to 04.5, the early common rail. Like they were really, really good. Same with the Duramax, early Duramax, the first the LB7s.
They were like 06, weren't they?
No, the first ones were in 03.
03, okay.
Yeah,
I'm not a truck guy, I'm a gun guy.
Yeah.
I mean, either I own trucks and a truck and guns, but
they're bulletproof.
Okay.
And as soon as they started getting emission stuff, it really started fucking shit up.
Sure.
Yeah.
And you get pre-emissions. Yeah, you got good trucks. But if you want something that is got all the emissions on it and you want a good truck, is Ford 6.7. Reason I say that is because we work on these things for a living.
Yeah.
And the trucks that you see the most on the road, but the least in your shop, probably a pretty good truck.
Yeah.
So I drive that, and my truck is 200,000 K. I've done brakes. That's it.
Nice.
So
are you seeing any of these? A lot of young guys are doing kind of resto mods on old trucks. It kind of seems to be the status symbol to get back to the square body Chevys and the old Power Wagon Dodge. Are you seeing any of those come through the shop? Guys wanting to build up old wagons or what?
Oh yeah, we get that. Yeah. We used to do a lot of the retrofits and stuff like that at one time, but it doesn't pay. We always lost money doing it. So when guys want to do that, if when they come in and they want a quote, I tell them, if you need a quote, then you can't afford the job.
Right.
That's which you probably get in the gun industry. Guys want to be fully kitted out. And well, how much is that going to be? Well, if you're going to ask me how much it's going to be, you probably can't afford to get kitted out.
Yeah, especially in the long range game. I actually had a conversation today with a guy, and it's always the, well, you know, what's the rifle worth? Tell them what the rifle's worth. Well, and how much is it like for a piece of glass? And it's like, well,
yeah.
And then I want this, and I need a spotting scope, and I need a kestrel, and I need a rangefinder, and I need all these things. And you're like,
$15,000 later.
Yeah, on the low end, you're like, look, man, if you're looking to do what you're talking about doing, like you're $30,000, and they're like, what? I'm like, buy used. Like you don't have to. What you're talking about, what you're standing here at the counter talking about, costs this much money.
Yeah, and it's hilarious because even if the guy has the bank, right, he can walk in the store, he can put down the cash. It's kind of like walking into the Ferrari dealership and buying the supercar. Yeah. Doesn't mean you can drive it, right?
True that.
Like, what's the point in buying a gun? You're never going to stretch it out to what it's for. You don't know how. You don't know basic ballistics. You don't know basic riflemanship. Mm-hmm. You know. So now that you have the thing, are you going to learn how to use it? Are you going to spend the money on the training?
What's way cheaper than all of that? Instead of because there are guys that will drop $30,000 on that, but just go take $1,000 class.
Yeah.
And then once you know things, then if you decide that you want to go down that path, being a rifleman will more than compensate you for half of what you would have spent financially to get this piece of kit that you don't know how to use. Like it's being a rifleman, that piece of it is.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's worth every penny.
Yeah, you're probably better with going with.
I'm sure it'd be like a race truck or car driver taking a professional driving class from a pro.
Yeah,
and suddenly they're like, oh, I don't need to waste all this money on all this other bullshit because I know, like you what's the saying? It's a software fix for a hardware problem or something like that. Like
Yep. And two industries I think are kind of similar that way.
Sure.
Where you can get guys go online and know, look at this YouTube video, that YouTube video, and put all these parts together, build a truck, or put all these parts together, build a gun, and still have a piece of shit because they just. But the deal is you should go to the professionals and find out what's best from the professional. I'm guilty of that too.
I built a lot of guns that once they got on the line in a 2-day 1,000 round per day course. None of them actually failed. But things are coming loose. You're realizing that, hey, wait a sec, that hot whiz bang thing that looked great on the website, on the YouTube video, has zero practical purpose, and it's actually slowing you down or actually getting in your way. And it's like the tail of the bad lever, right? Everybody was running those bad levers forever. The bad lever is a little lever that bolts on your AR-15. Mm-hmm. onto your bolt release.
Yep.
So you could actuate your bolt release with your trigger finger. It sat inside the trigger guard. And those would cause just no end of problems with guys because they'd be constantly dropping the bolt on an empty chamber, or it would just fall off. So here was this thing that looked really, really cool when was it Travis Haley and Chris Costa back in the day from Magpul were running these things in videos. Looked fantastic. Zero practical purpose for most people.
Right, because the guy's gun's empty, he goes to break it into high ready, his finger as he's sliding out hits the release, the bolt is forward, he goes to slam the mag home. He didn't download it by 2 rounds, or whatever, so the mag falls back out when he goes to run the bolt once he realizes he fucked up, or it does see, then he still has to run the bolt and he's lost all his time.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, all right, cool.
Looked cool on the video though.
Yeah.
So,
and it sells though because it looked cool.
100%. Sure, and it's like a $2 piece of metal that they're charging $38 for, right? 38 American dollars to strap this thing on your rifle, and marketing goes a long way. So, at what point do you go from farming to involvement in your community with things like preparedness and homesteading?
Oh boy,
was it pre-COVID? Before, or was
actually,
that sort of
I've always been a little bit of a freak show. I'm kind of a prepper spirit anyway, so I've always had an interest.
I've known you since I think not known well, but I knew who you were. I think in 2018, I think is the first time I met you because you come into the shop.
Yep.
And I didn't realize how deep you were into, certain things, because everyone kind of keeps
everybody keeps in their own little bubble.
Thing, but we're kind of curious as like, when did you?
Well, it's shows like that it was an A&E had the show Preppers
Yeah.
for a while, and they just like hunted down these lone wolf people living out in the boondocks, and cases of spam and ammo, and waiting on the end of the world. And it's like, I grew up in the 80s, man. Like, my old man, we lived in Jasper. We had a storage room that was top to bottom canned food. His hunting bag, rifles, and stuff like that are accessible, because he hunted a lot. We hunted a lot. Obviously, we had to leave the park, but and then we had a huge deep freeze. Probably twice the size of this table. One of those built like an old Buick deep freezes.
Yeah.
And that thing was full of fish. It was full of wild meat. It was full of wild berries. We'd go and pick blueberries and cut blocks in BC in the late summertime all the time. Just about every year we would go down to the Okanagan, kind of late August, to go down there and pick fruit and come back with a van full of fruit.
Yep.
He had a big old, I think it was a Ford Econoline van. It was a 4-wheel drive. It was like the hunting wagon, just the bush wagon and stuff like that. And that's just how I grew up. So when I heard about prepping and stuff like that, I'm like, oh, that's just like normal life
normal.
in the 80s, because the commies are coming.
Prepping and being a farmer are kind of the same.
Kind of the same thing, really. Yeah. But it was actually the norm when I was a kid. Everybody was the same way, kind of the way you were raised, where you put up your meat, you put up your food, you put in a garden. And see, nowadays, everybody seems to think the norm is, if you want a cookie, you go buy a cookie. You want ice cream, you go buy an ice cream. You go, buy whatever you want. You get a hole in your jeans, go buy a new pair of jeans. They think that's the norm. It is not the norm. This has just been like the last 30 years of our lives. The norm is, if you get a hole in your jeans, you better know how to patch it.
Yep.
The norm is, if you don't have food put up for the winter, you're going to go hungry at one point. If you don't have, a garden put in, you're going to go hungry at one point. If you don't have meat in the freezer, you're going to go hungry. That is the norm. People have been spoiled. So I've been kind of always had the prepper spirit, because I was raised poor. We were dirt poor. Like, seriously, I almost had to jerk off the dog to feed the cat. That's how bad it was.
I haven't heard that one in a while.
That's staying in.
Absolutely.
But anyways, so I've always kind of thought that way. And we have a lot of kids. My wife and I got 6 kids, 11 grandkids now.
Nice.
But
congrats.
Thank you.
You're doing the work we aren't, because we don't have kids. We got one dog, and my mother-in-law lives with us.
Yeah, well, they're overrated.
I had all this time to do things like podcast.
Yeah, actually, no, they're all a blessing. But anyways, so with that many kids, we always had to make sure that we hunted and had a garden and stuff like that. So it's always been a kind of thing for me. But when it started really amping up, when I started seeing COVID, and I think there was something in the air that many, many, many people sensed, because I talked to thousands of people, and thousands of people have the same sentiment that they feel that something's wrong. I just felt like something's up here. This is not adding up. This is something weird about what's going on in the world.
Yeah.
So I started, really kind of amping up my game. Same with my brother. My brother started doing the same thing. He built his place completely off grid and became completely self-sufficient. And we became as self-sufficient as we could. Then my thoughts were, what's a sense of being self-sufficient if you're just going to be a target?
Sure.
Because if something happened in the world, and I think COVID is actually probably a good indication of, it could have went really bad. It didn't,
100%.
but it could have.
Because in preliminarily, when we were watching the reports from all over the world pour in on, the mainstream media and social media, it was like, oh my God, they are stacking bodies in the streets of China. They're welding buildings shut. Like, it was this dystopian fuck show.
Yeah.
For lack of a better term, where everyone's like, oh, this is real. Like, it's certainly in the first 60 to 90 days. Like, there was no, everything looked like this was the end of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't look good. So.
Oh, for sure. And I think for myself, I've always had this mindset where an awareness that the things that we have, I've traveled a little bit around the world, and you see how other people live, and they build up the resiliency in their society over generations and generations of wars and hardships and famines and stuff like that. Whereas we're a relatively young nation, and most of what we have is very new and very fragile. The peace and the security and all this stuff that we have in the West, especially in the United States and Canada, is super, super fragile because it's held together with things that aren't real.
Yeah.
Right. So it's held together with things like the stock market and held together with things like government, law. Right. And these things exist only on paper. But when it comes down to brass tacks, when it's time to feed people, when, trucks stop running or, there's a fuel shortage, or either all it takes is to see like what happens if there's a bad ice storm out east, if there's a seriously cold winter in northern Alberta, we're not that far removed from a couple generations ago where, like you say, people had to put up food in the wintertime or you didn't have anything. So I think, COVID was kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people. Yeah. In our household, it was like, well, okay, we'll go get 100 pounds of flour and 100 pounds of sugar. And if we start needing more than that, then it's time to, like, we're really in the shit. And then there's some much bigger problems. So we kind of shored up a few things and then just kind of wrote it out. I know my mother-in-law was asking about stuff at the time, like, do we have, what happens if the power goes out? And I'm like, well, we have lanterns, we have lamps, we have oil lamps. All this stuff is already there, like this, because that's the way I was raised. So when I see it, I buy it. I look in, with how my life is, and I say, if I need to get through a short span of time, because I live in town, right? So it's a short game. Like if things get really, really bad, but a lot of that stuff is already there. But for a lot of people, seeing that thin veneer of civilization kind of get a little bit brittle was really disconcerting.
So for when it kind of started for you, was that from like talking with like friends and neighbors, family, customers, or kind of a mix of everybody, where it was kind of like so that general kind of feeling starting to build?
Exactly.
Was there anything in particular that kind of like really kicked it for you?
I wouldn't think anything in particular. It was just, listening to my staff, listen to the customers coming in, and because I talk to so many people, I'm in the same kind of interest. You talk to how many people a day? Same with me, and you get a sense of what's really being talked about out there and what's in people's minds. And I like deep conversation, and I'm always have people in my office having deep conversations about whatever. And so you kind of get to hear their hearts, and when their hearts are saying that they feel something's wrong, I'm like, man, you know what? Yeah, maybe I should be doing something a little more. And then I started thinking that, well, if I'm doing this for me, then what happens about other people if they don't prepare? Then let's just say for, something does go wrong. And if you haven't prepared, are you going to sit there and watch your family starve to death, or are you going to go out there and find somebody who's got food and you're going to take it? Yep. Then I started thinking, well, that could be a thing. Yeah. And actually, I'll give you a story. This was last week. I sit in my office, and again, I was having a conversation with a fellow, and he said, well, and we were talking about this, and he's very much on page with all this stuff. And he said, well, you know what? I've got a gun. He said, so I haven't put up really stockpiled anything. He said, but I've got a gun, and I don't really like my neighbor much, so I'll just go take his stuff. And I was like, yeah, you right there are the problem. You are you're now become the enemy. This is what we're trying to avoid. 100%. People be proactive so that there doesn't have to be any looting. There doesn't have to be any of that stuff. So back to the kind of the beginning of all this, what started with it. During COVID, there was, which Barry Holland, he wrote a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy. He is a sniper in a JTF2, retired member. I'm
aware of him, yeah.
Yeah, good guy. He came to my house, and he was like, I feel something's up. I feel something's amiss, and it just doesn't feel right. And I've seen stuff like this in other countries, and I just don't feel right about it. I want to do something so that we can help others to be successful in a fallen society if it got like that.
Sure.
And I'm like, perfect. You know what, dude? You're an answer to prayer, because I've been sitting there wondering, like, what do I do?
Yeah, where do you even start?
Where do I even start? Yeah.
Yeah.
So he wrote the original CPP course that we had done, and
which was fucking wild, by the way.
So I heard.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. So, anyways, but then I was like, well, it can't be just about this. What good is combat if you've got nothing to protect? What is good is combat if you've got nobody to protect?
Yeah.
You know, why focus on that? Let's focus on other skills, medicinal and edible plants of the boreal forest. Let's focus on canning skills. Let's focus on other types of food preparation skills. Let's focus on trauma med.
Yep.
You know, in a fallen society, you think you're going to go to a hospital for anything? If you're not a doctor yourself, you're as only good as the information you have. So we have the information here, and the means to train it. Let's train it. And, you know, and the list goes on and on and on from there for what we train. So, and it's growing more and more and more all the time. It's been surreal. It's been very surreal how much it's been taken off.
I know one of the talking points that I've used to get people, like, you know, I'm not saying you don't, you know, because people like, they don't want to be, was it the connotation of being a prepper? They don't want to be associated with like being like
well, I think it's exactly what you just said. When people start to look at it, it's you have to first bridge this gap of this mental gap where it's, I don't know what to do.
Right. So
if something happened right now, I am not prepared. And to admit that to yourself, to admit that all of it, like you've paid your taxes, you've got a good job, you went to university, you got a degree, you've got a family. As far as you know, you're doing everything you're supposed to do, and the system is supposed to look after you.
Yeah.
Because we've built this thing up. But now that it's been revealed to you that that's not actually how the real world works.
Yeah,
and all this stuff that you've done is essentially fruitless. It's, where do you begin?
So one of the conversations that I've had with people about like where to begin, because they're like, you know, they don't want to be deemed as paranoid. And I'll just ask them a question like, well, do you go camping? They're like, yeah. I'm like, well, how many water jugs do you have? Well, 4. I got 4 big ones for when I go camping. I'm like, all right. How much space do they take up? Well, I don't know. There's a shelf in my garage. I'm like, are they full or empty right now? Well, they're empty. I don't need them. I'm like, okay,
empty.
Well, I just want to relate to you the fact that like it takes just as much space to store an empty water jug as a full one. And that water's good for at least 6 months, like just right out of the tap. You don't even have to worry about it. So you could really like fill it up. And if you don't need it over the winter, well, pour it on your plants in the spring and then just fill them up again. And you know, hey, do you have a jerry can? Well, yeah. Was it full? Well, no, I only fill it up if we're going on a quadding trip. I'm like, well, why wouldn't you just fill it full of gas and leave it full? And like in Canada, like your fuel's good for a year, man. You don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, rotate it out once in a while.
Yeah, like you could literally rotate your fuel every spring. And I was like, oh, you have 4, you know, fuel cans? Well, why don't you just keep them full?
Yep.
Like that's literally all it takes to not be a liability when there's a problem. You could have fuel, which is mobility.
Yeah.
And you could have water, which is life. Like these are things you already have these empty cans for, and you don't have to be paranoid and feel like you're weird. You can just have some normal basic things. Like,
you know, and it's gone beyond people even thinking they're weird anymore, because man, everybody's thinking about this kind of stuff. So it's actually it's very common now. But and for me, and I think for you as well, it's a normal way of thinking that, oh, I got jerry cans. Well, why would you have big jerry cans? Keep them full, because, you know, even if the power goes down, you don't know if actually, was it 7-8 years ago, we had a great big windstorm. We were without power at our farm for 7 days.
Yep.
So now, can you imagine a city going without power? You're not going to get gas from a gas station. No. So if you don't have gas in your vehicle to get out of the city, or gas in the garage, you know, in a couple jerry cans, well, then you're hooped. You're if you don't have water, you're not going to be turning on a tap, because guess what? There's no power, no pumps.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and if you want to go, like people tend to jump when they start looking at this thing. And I did the same thing when I kind of started getting my life together, and I started to kind of look at, okay, I've got something I want to defend or build resiliency into. First thing I went to is I'm going to go, you know, buy a handgun and learn to shoot.
Yeah.
Well, and that was all well and good. I met some great people, But those people quickly revealed to me that I had kind of jumped to the last chapter in the book instead of going to the first chapter in the book, which was, what else are you doing? Like, what have you done to make yourself resilient?
Mm-hmm.
You know, are you healthy? You know,
Yeah,
can you get up and run? Can you carry somebody? Can you work for days on end if you need to?
exactly.
Do you have the ability to, you know, do some sort of martial arts? That came later because you know the
Well, do you have any skills?
Yeah, that's
Like,
just
if you're not a welder, you probably won't make it.
100%, 100%,
Good gravy.
100%.
I had to throw it in there.
We all know welders have built the world.
Yeah.
They never fuck anything up.
Definitely not.
Yeah.
Good.
But I think with that resiliency, like it's incremental, right? You're adding a little bit at a time to your lifestyle.
Exactly.
Regardless of where you live. I mean, most people don't have the upward mobility to go and buy an off-grid or build an off-grid, you know, cabin on a quarter section or whatever. They just don't have that means.
Yeah.
So if you're living in town, what are the things you can do to start to disconnect yourself from those supply lines and buy yourself time? That's all you're doing.
Yeah, and when it comes to stuff like that in town, for example, I have this argument with my kids. My kids don't think the same way I do. They think, oh, Dad's got this.
Imagine that.
Yeah.
The old man's crazy.
Old man's crazy. Yeah. I told my daughter, I said, you know what? What's the worst case scenario? I die and you guys got a whole lot of epic shit to sort out. But anyways, my kids will like, well, I can't afford, you know, to stockpile anything. But yet they'll have $400 to go spend the weekend at the rodeo. Or they'll go out to, you know, Red Willow Falls and spend a weekend out there. Well, yeah, you know what? You're taking beer, you're taking this, you're taking that. Why don't you take the money from that beer and buy a couple bags of rice? Every month, buy an extra bag of rice. Buy something of dried goods that you can just put away. Who cares if all you got to eat is rice? Whoop-de-doo. At least you're feeding your family.
It's calories.
It's calories. There's
half the world's feeding on rice.
Exactly. Yeah. You know, and I'm not saying rice is the only thing. Like, there's many, many, many things that a person can, but you should be focusing on something every month, because I'm going to appeal to all men that listen to this. If something failed in the society and us as men are not prepared for our families, shame on us.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
If your family has to starve because you seen the signs and failed to notice them and failed to do anything about it, shame on you.
Yep.
I wouldn't be able to look at myself in the mirror going, you know what? I seen the signs of this coming and I just didn't do the necessary steps to take precautions for this. It's like right now, it's like everybody sees this storm clouds forming in the you know, on the horizon, and you're going to send your family out there. It's good.
Yeah.
Well, do you know for 100% fact it's good? You don't know how bad the storm's going to be, but you know something's brewing.
Every year winter comes.
Yeah.
In this country, every fucking year, there's one day where there's a minus 50 wind chill.
Yep.
Guess what? Your car's probably not going to start if you didn't plug it in.
Mm-hmm.
Last year, they were talking about rolling blackouts.
Yep.
You know, do you have secondary heat?
Yeah.
Do you have means of making light?
Exactly.
You know, what are you going to do if it's a day, 2 days, 3 days, a week, a month before and all you got to do is start thinking this way. For me, the biggest barometer was the fucking toilet paper.
Oh my gosh.
I couldn't believe it because
I bought so much toilet paper.
Oh yeah,
I didn't buy any.
We've always kept some stock, right? We've always got a case or two in the house.
Sure.
But we knew people that didn't have any.
Yeah.
That, you know, they're lower income. They don't own a vehicle. You know, they're not beating the crowds to Costco to buy 20 cases of toilet paper.
Yeah.
But the fact that people were fanatical about toilet paper, to the point where you had, you know, people setting up shop outside of the Costco selling fucking rolls of toilet paper to people, that was just the microcosm of A, how fragile it is, B, how tenuous the social contract is between people, and C, like, you're gonna wipe your ass at least once a day.
Yep.
Right? So why don't you have fucking toilet paper in the house? Why, when you go to Costco, because you're probably not going there every fucking day,
Yeah.
Grab a fucking $20 case of toilet paper and throw it in the closet or whatever.
How much of that stuff does it was insane how much people were buying.
Yeah.
I was actually embarrassed. I needed to buy toilet paper, and I was embarrassed to go buy toilet paper because I was like, man, I hope somebody thinks I'm not one of them freak shows. It's,
Yeah. Well, I think it's a useful conversation to have with people too, though, when you can kind of see that they don't really, I don't want to say have an awareness of the world, but it's like, hey, like, if the power did go out for a weekend, like, are you okay? Like, you got food, water, like, you're good for the weekend? Like, what if there was no heat? Like, it's always 40 below for 3 weeks in December here.
Yeah.
Like, are you cool for like a day or two? And then you can see the gears start grinding in their head. It's like, all right, well, like, if you had to keep one room in your house warm to keep your family warm, could you keep that one room warm? And they're like, maybe I should get some candles and get a few other things. And it's going to suck, but at least it's like, these are low expenditure things that you can just put away in a closet.
They don't go bad, man.
Yeah,
exactly.
for sure. And then it's like, okay, well, cool, you're good for 3 days. Like, could you make 3 weeks? Ooh.
Yeah.
Could you do 3 months? And like, after 3 months, it's kind of like, I think for most people, like you'll get your people who are a little bit more serious about it, like, a year, 3 years, like, I'm never coming home, like, I'm good, like, they can nuke us tomorrow. But I think for most people, if you can make 3 weeks, you'll probably get through most short-term, like, what would you call it? Call it an act of God. Like, there's a fire, a flood, a storm, some other thing. Or a dam blows, like, typically within 3 weeks, like, you're probably okay. And if you can push that out to 3 months, good for you. And then most people, life is what it is. They probably can't think beyond that. But it's always, for me, it's always been worth having that conversation with people.
Yep.
Like, well, would you make it overnight if, like, the furnace guy couldn't come till Monday, and it's Sunday morning, you wake up and there's no heat in your house. Are you cool for the day? Like, and it might just be that, I know how to drain the water lines in my house before they completely freeze, and I go to my brother's place and I can stay warm with my family. Well, at least you have a plan.
Some sort of contingency.
It's like, well, what if it was 3 days and it's out in his house too? Like, what if there's no power in the city or out in the country? Like, are you good for a long weekend? Are you good that way? Because if you're not, it doesn't take much to get there, and then kind of build out from there. So it's
and even in the summer, I think we've seen over the last couple of years that forest fires are a real, something that can push people out of their homes and stuff. Do you have a bug out plan? What's your plan there? And we actually developed a course, Ryan Wills did, on bugging out and bugging in. It's called An Intro to Prep. And it talks about those scenarios and stuff of the fires and stuff. These are reality scenarios, reality things that can very well happen. Power lines go down with a freaking massive storm. We can get massive storms. You never know what's going to happen. So, or it can be on a larger global scale, which you never know. Myself, I try and stay out of all the conspiracy theory stuff, but it's really hard to.
Oh, I love that stuff.
I'm involved in it, but I try not to let it affect me.
But I'm there as a fan.
Yeah,
because first thing I did when I got the internet in 2006, because I was a bit of a Luddite before that. I wrote on a typewriter. In the 2000s.
I know this story. I gotta pee.
And the first thing I did when I got the internet was like, what am I missing out on? And I went into the rabbit hole as far as you could go on every single conspiracy theory. The funny thing is how many of them came true in the past 5 years.
What's the difference between truth and conspiracy theories?
Yeah,
about 4 years.
Well, not even now. I mean, they're coming true every other day. But but the wildest stuff that I remember guys in the 80s talking about, and the guy if you were into conspiracies in the 80s, you were seriously tinfoil hat territory. Yeah, right. You were buying books from the back of Soldier of Fortune magazine, and that kind of stuff started to stack up. Mm-hmm. That it was like, oh, there really are these movements in the world. There really are these groups. There really are these power players. Yeah, and this is really the way the world works. And the people that I knew growing up and the people that I had as close friends, these are all conversations that we had over a dozen beers, right? Yeah. And to look at it now and to see just how much of that stuff wasn't bullshit. Yep. There was enough truth in it now to where those guys who we would write off 30 years ago as being just totally fucking batshit crazy. Not so crazy.
Yep. Well, even the pandemic, like, it was a conspiracy theory before. The WEF had announced, that there possibly could be a pandemic in the future, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Next thing you know, then there's a pandemic. Now WEF talks about cyber attacks, taking down infrastructure and power grids and stuff like that. Well, to me, that's not a conspiracy theory. That's something that's inevitably going to happen. And we're starting to see that now, actually, already, where there is cyber attacks. So, it's gonna be interesting.
I think anything that's bad, anything that can happen, will happen eventually. Yeah. Right. Yeah. There's too many bad actors in the world that they're not going to exploit a weakness in somebody's infrastructure, and like that's just the way
another coaster.
It's just the way the world is, right? So when it comes to, I think preparedness is kind of a misnomer for it. I really like Mike Glover talks a lot about resiliency, and that makes a lot more sense to me. Yeah, because I remember years ago, probably 2006, 2007, when I got on the internet and got down the deep dark rabbit hole and ordered a handgun and started going to the Wappi Shooters Club and all that stuff. I asked somebody, kind of like, where do you start? And they gave me this book.
You got to get a Glock.
No, they gave me a book.
Oh, okay.
It's just on the shelf there. It's called The Self-Sufficient Life and How to Live It. And basically, it's a book on 1800s skills homesteading, taken from Europe and North America.
Bring that over.
That's a good book, then.
Yeah, that was the book that they gave me. Oh yeah. And that was kind of the eye opener for me when it was like, oh, okay, this is what it looks like in reality, where it's about these basic skills. So I always think, like, if say we get the coronal mass ejection or the EMP that knocks us back, we're basically going to go back to the 1800s really quick.
Oh, yeah. I hope so.
And
apocalypse is my retirement plan now. Right, I hope everybody knows that.
Hey, I grew up in the 80s, man. I'm down for the Robot War or Red Dawn, whichever happens first. Right? Can't shoot that steel core ammo indoors anyway.
Drones, though, that's such a downer.
That's okay. That's okay. It's just necessity breeds invention, right? So now you've got anti-drone drones.
Yeah.
And now you've got. I was talking to one of my coworkers about this the other day because he was kind of watching some videos about Ukraine and drone stuff. And I'm like, well, now they have drones and they have anti-drone drones and they have essentially AI that'll run these drones. So you're going to have a drone war.
AI running a drone.
You're going to have a drone war. But now the biggest AI that they're building it's all commercial. So this company has their AI and this company has this AI and this company has their AI. So the first AI conflict is going to be economic and commercial. But, like, is it only a matter of time before, like, Coke's AI decides to wipe out Pepsi's customer base first in order to win? Like, is that how it's going to go down? Wow. But I mean, like,
fuck did I miss? Hold on. Let's rewind. So
you'll have to watch the episode.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to watch this. What the hell?
You shouldn't have went and pissed.
Yeah, sorry, man. I chugged a big gallon of water before I came here just so I wouldn't lose my voice. But getting back, we talked about prepping and how you started to get into it, where it was a little bit more accelerated, maybe through your conversations, like with your customer base, your family and friends. Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering for you, like, how did it sort of evolve from there? Like, what was the next kind of steps that you started to take, where you decided, like, oh, I'm actually going to kind of take a bit of a leadership role in this, and kind of, like you said, you
interest
talked to Barry.
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. Yeah, interest with others. The more I started talking about it with other people, the more other people like, I would love to learn something like that. I would love to learn some skills. I would love that. So then I kind of seen a need for that. So then I thought, all right, well, then let's move ahead with this. And, the way I think, my brain, just the way it is some people will say, oh, boy, we need to go buy freaking 50 pounds of flour. I don't think that way. I don't think that I need to stockpile flour. I think I need to buy a flour mill and stockpile seeds. On some
It's
people,
it's a farmer's mentality.
exactly. Some people would say, oh, well, we need to, if we can't get any building supplies, we should probably, buy a bunch of lumber and store it. Well, no, not me. I go and buy a sawmill.
Yep.
Beautiful sawmill, which you've seen
Yep.
and stuff. But I do that with everything. I'll learn how to make, and I'll buy the infrastructure to make everything that I need to survive.
Yeah.
So I wanted to teach those skills and that type of mentality to people, because in a community, not everybody doesn't have to do everything, but each person should do something. One person, if they're in a community, they should have chickens, and okay, get 100 chickens, enough that you can feed everybody. You should have one person or two people with a flour mill that can make flour for everybody. You should have people that stockpile some seeds and know how to make other plants go to seed, so that you can have continuous seeds for, year over year. So I wanted to be able to teach those skills to others. I don't like teaching. I just like to organize others to teach it.
Yeah.
And I fill in the spots wherever I can. So, and that's where it's actually kind of morphed from that. So then it started out with the guys, Barry and Shane, that did the CPP course. And then, Mike and Lucas came in with Barton's, with the other carbine courses and stuff, and kind of filled in those roles.
Physical security roles.
Exactly. Because, again, what's the sense of having a gun if you don't actually know how to run it? And what's the sense of having anything that you're going to need to protect and not know how to protect it? What's the sense of working together in a community if you don't know how to protect that community? So kind of teaching skills on that. And then it was going into bushcrafting skills. That's an art that not very many people know anymore. Yep. And if you don't have anything and you need to just go out into the bush and forage, you can forage if you know what you're doing. So, and I wouldn't teach that course myself. I figured in my head that, I'm going to get the best of the best that I could possibly get for the guys to come teach us stuff. So we get a guy. He's a bushcraft master. He's from Calgary. His name's Dragon, and he comes up and he teaches the bushcraft class. And what's that?
So of course, his name's Dragon.
That's his real name too.
Love it.
Pretty cool cat. And then I got Ross Hinter. He came up. He's a liaison for the Alberta Trappers Association, and he came up and ran a trapping class.
Yep.
Because people, if you're needing food, you need to know how to trap food. Because honestly, a gun is just a dinner bell. So how can you trap and, other forms of catching animals to ensure success?
Yep.
So we started teaching those skills, and then canning classes. We had a girl named Kimberly Frisk, and she would teach canning, because I thought, okay, I could teach canning. I know enough about it, but do I know enough about it to be dangerous, or enough about it to be perfectly safe to train it?
Yep.
It's not my not my profession. So I'll hire a professional to come in, teach it, and then I know it's going to be done right, where she's teaching people how to do it so you don't get botulism or whatever else. Yep. I taught on freeze drying and dehydrating and stuff like that, other means of putting up food. And then I got a butcher, the guy that owns Carnivore's Meat Shop in Grand Prairie. I know him. Sam Retzlaff? Yeah, he's a good guy. Yeah. And he used to grab my ass all the time. He used to work for me.
Not surprised. He's a really friendly guy. Sweet. I was eating some of his AAA ribeyes here the other night, actually. They're fantastic. Yeah.
Next time you go in there and say, hey, you used to grab Ernie's ass. But anyway.
It's a heck of an icebreaker.
That's a heck of an icebreaker.
We'd be friends now.
So I got him to teach the butchering class, even though I have my own butcher area, my own butcher house. Yep. But so he would come there actually and teach it there. But I taught the sausage making and the bacons and stuff like that. And so those are just skills that if people don't have, which a lot of them are forgotten. Some guys still practice it, but in just regular life, it's kind of forgotten. And if people don't have those skills, then the chance of success in a fallen society is less.
Well, sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say it's interesting that kind of the way that you break it down is that community building is that, recognizing that you can't be the expert in everything, so bring in expertise where you can. And I think you're I'll never consider myself really an expert in anything, but I sort of recognize for me what I can bring to the table, and then I kind of focus on that, because it's hard for me to
I've seen you fight. You're an expert.
Well, whatever. I think it's important that people recognize what they can bring to the table and try and bring the best of what they have to offer to the community.
Yeah.
And I think it's fascinating that you, when you don't know something, you bring in an expert,
Exactly.
but you also immerse yourself in it. You know just enough to kind of get yourself by, that's really, that might seem weird for people to hear now, but like 20 years ago, that was commonplace, where you just like, okay, I need lumber. I guess I'll get a sawmill and do it myself. Like that kind of like, that.
Well, the thing is
jack of all trades, master of none.
For sure.
Yeah, a lot of these skills, we're one generation away from losing them.
Yeah.
I was like that with canning, because like I said, growing up, my family would go out of their way to kind of put up food every year, but I realized that there was a handful of my friends, and I mean a bare handful, who were taught by their parents how to do any of that. 99% had no idea, but their parents, my parents, like growing up poor, like dirt poor, subsistence farming, all that kind of stuff. Like that was one generation ago.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And here we are in one generation, have lost, and not what is disposable, but this is what keeps us alive. This is how we have grown into the world, right? We figure out how to get food. We figure out how to get shelter. We figure out how to defend ourselves. We figure out how to communicate with the people around us. We figure out how to build community. For you, at what point did it go from being like kind of something that was happening inside conversation to something you started directly pursuing? Was there like a catalyst moment where you're like, I'm going to take this now?
And it was after a CPP course. Excuse me. This beer.
It'll do it to you every time.
One
but
sip.
anyways,
Folks. No.
after one of the CPP courses, I had a bunch of the guys that, which Lucas knows quite well, because you guys have taken many different courses and stuff together as well over the years. And they all came to me and were like, we want to get involved with you because we believe in what you're doing. And we discuss, okay, what classes are we going to do? Where are we going to take it from here? And how are we going to do this? And is there other courses we need to develop and write and do that? So over the winter times, last winter, we developed a whole bunch of different classes. And then this year we started incorporating some of those. And it started growing, actually. Let me back up. So after last year, I had a barbecue out at my farm. And I'm not a social media guy or anything. It was just word of mouth. And there was people from Calgary, Red Deer, from Saskatchewan, from Northern Alberta, from BC that showed up. We had 135 people show up at my place for a barbecue, all on the same page of this.
Yeah.
Yes, we want some courses and classes because we don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, there's a real need for this. And then we formed the board and stuff, and we started writing classes and courses, and it's been growing. I've been down in Calgary, talking to a group down in Calgary, Central Alberta. After this podcast, on the weekend, we just finished a 2-day workshop on courses and classes and talking about prepping and what that looks like. Then we were asked to do one in Eaglesham, Bezanson, and Dawson Creek.
Okay.
And there is another group in Grand Prairie that I go to the Paradise Inn and talk to them later in the week. So this is actually picking up more and more and more steam, like really fast. We're actually kind of overwhelmed. We're like, well, okay. But then again, I answered a prayer. We were in La Glace doing a presentation there at the hall, and there were some ladies that were from the Parallel Society that were there, and they're like, yes, we need to connect with you guys.
What is the Parallel Society?
Parallel Society. So these ladies, they've got all kinds of societies. They're just, through the whole pandemic, they're the ones that was going and picketing all these, the mask mandates, and they were just very active members in everything that is changing in our world that is not right. So they were actively fighting against it.
Kind of the counterbalance voice of reason.
Right. So, but they've never thought of this stuff. Like, what happens if, okay, they're fighting, but then if they never thought that if they lose the fight or something happens in society and there's a fall, what happens then? And then when they heard us talk, they were like, we need to connect with these guys. So they did.
Oh, I see.
And it has taken off from there. These girls are really good with marketing and just getting it out there for us. I'm horrible with that, believe it or not, having a company that is successful as mine, but that was all my wife's doing. And my wife, because like I was sharing with you guys, she had blown her discs in her back. Right. And she has spent a lot of time not being able to do much of anything. So she just had surgeries, and I'm certain she's going to be good as gold now. But I don't want to put a bunch of demands or have her do anything.
For sure.
So
sounds like you guys need another secretary.
Oh, yeah.
So
actually, we got a pretty good team now, and it's all coming together. And there's another guy, too, Anthony. He just went down to Calgary, met with a group down in Calgary that flew in from Ontario. They're wanting to take kind of what we're doing here into Ontario as well. So it's actually kind of really neat how this is starting to take off and grow more. And it's just more of a stimulation of thought, in a sense. Like, think outside the box here. What if? Now, how do you plan for that what if?
Well, really, it's not a bizarre question. It's really just, what if you had to look after yourself and your family?
Exactly. Yep.
So what kind of locales and what kind of like demographics are you seeing this coming from? Is it from more urban people who aren't prepared, like people from the city? Is it more people from the country who are looking to network and pick up skills? Is it more from one religious base? Is there an involvement? Does it kind of span a group of people?
All of the above.
Or
no, it's all of the above. It's really there's country folk, there's old, young. It's all of the above.
Just almost everybody's taking a look around and going, man, we're fucked.
I had a conversation. Yeah, and that's the thing that I was saying. Like, I'm seeing so much. Like, I literally talked to thousands of people, and they all just like, something's not right.
Yeah.
And you know what? You get all kinds of, this is why I say I don't like to get into conspiracy theories, because you can talk to so many people where I think this is going to happen. I think this is going to happen. I think this is going to happen. Who gives a shit what's going to happen? We just know something's going to happen.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who's right about what. But what we do know is something's wrong and something doesn't feel right. So who cares about what it is? Let's just worry about the outcome of it.
100%. It's always been that way. Like I said, it's a thin veneer that keeps our society together.
Yeah.
It's all artificial. The cheap goods, the cheap food, all that stuff that's in our societies now, none of that is real. That's all due to giant multinational corporations.
Exactly.
We're going to take a cotton plant from southern United States and ship it to Thailand, have it woven into fabric, then ship it to China, have it made into a shirt, or made into, and then ship it down to Mexico, have it finished so you can buy it over here at Walmart in Grand Prairie for $4, and then wear it for 3 days and throw it out again. Yep. Like, that kind of consumer society isn't real.
Yep.
That kind of the way that we've built and kind of been sold the world. I mean, in the 80s, it was great because we bought it all lock, stock, and barrel. It was fantastic. As the 90s and the 2000s wore on, we began to see a little bit more, September 11th, we saw a 20-year war that happened. And then we saw something like internationally like COVID, where I think, whenever something bad happens, there's always somebody there to profit. And you see that in the disaster prep space as well. There's always somebody who's going to try and sell you the fix for your fear. So first they're going to convince you what to be afraid of, and then they're going to sell you the fix for it. Right? Oh, hang in there. We're only an hour in.
That was a burp and a cough at the same time.
That's okay. At least it wasn't out the other end. Well, there's a reason why these chairs are brown.
Yeah.
But I think what's interesting too is when you give people a little kind of a glimpse into self-sufficiency, it's like this immense weight lifted.
Yeah.
What fights fear? Education.
Yeah. So one thing that I have, and I'm sure everybody has one, but one thing I have never in my life struggled with is how to make a fire. It could be fucking pouring rain. It could be cold. Doesn't matter to me. Like, we're going to be warm.
Yeah.
And I've always taken that for granted. And over the years, I've kind of like taught some people like a little like, what are you doing, man? Like, here's how you build a fire. And, it's always interesting if you can give that gift to somebody else, because like, now they know it too. And you can almost see like this visible relief in their soul. I mean, it's on a spiritual level where they're like, this is
that's
a
primal.
Basic thing everybody should know. And
Yeah,
like,
you didn't grow up in the mountains building forts and making
We
fires.
would think that that's normal.
It's
and
not.
I was camping one time, and there's this guy out there, and he brought you could tell it was all brand new stuff. He went to Walmart, bought tent, sleeping bag, blah, blah, blah. He literally went and pulled green branches off, leaves and everything on them, cracked them all up, and was sitting there trying to light them in the fire, and he couldn't get a fire going.
Yeah.
And so I told him, do you want me to light you a fire? And he's like, no, I'm fine. And so he wound up packing up in the middle of the night and leaving. But it's just an indication of the lack of skills.
Yeah.
When you can't even light a fire, or you don't even know that it's green wood and it's not going to light. To me, that's like common knowledge, but it's not.
But
it's not
those
common.
are things that maybe our generation takes for granted.
Yeah.
And we,
It's not just that, man. It's a regional thing.
Yeah.
Growing up in Jasper, I would have, I worked in the service industry in summers and stuff like that. I would have people ask me how often they drain the lake to paint the bottom blue. I had people ask, like, what the white stuff is on the top of the mountain and how they get up there to paint it. I had people ask us where the domesticated wildlife was. Like,
wow.
And these are people who have never set foot out of their 4 square blocks of some major metropolitan area.
Yeah.
And they saved up some money to go to the mountains for their summer vacation. And these people are out there trying to hand feed Twinkies to a grizzly bear, right? Like, it is what it is, right? That's just, and I don't think that's any different now.
Good gravy.
I don't think that's any different now.
It isn't. I know for sarcastic bastards like me, there's always the struggle between like, you know what? Maybe they die, or should I actually take some time out of my day and help this person?
Yeah.
And typically, like, I guess certainly as I get older, I want to help people more. I'm like, you know what? Like, you need to know this. Like, I can't believe it skipped your generation. Like, maybe,
The more people you can teach skills to now is the less chaos you have to deal with later.
Well, I think it's important to recognize too that there, is it the whole, was like good times create weak men, that whole cycle or whatever. But I think sometimes we have to take a step back and recognize that we've had it so good for so long.
Yeah.
That some of these skills have fallen by the wayside. And instead of having like this, I don't want to say like a condescending attitude to the people that don't know it. Like, I'm more motivated now to like, okay, like, then like come out and do this with us. Like you need to know this. It's important.
Yeah.
Because like, if you don't know it and you have kids, who's going to teach your kids this? Right.
Exactly,
I might not need these skills anymore. Like the last time I had to build a fire because I was frozen, not very often. There's been a few times and it paid off because I knew how to do it. But man, that knowledge can't die with me. Like my kids have to know it and they might never need it, but their kids might. Like there's certain things in society that are so, like you said, what do you say? Like primal, like base level skills, like how to build a fire.
Well, are you an asset or are you a liability?
Exactly.
Are you an asset to your family or are you a liability? Are you an asset to your community? Like one of the big things that I think has come out recently, I follow all kinds of these prepper, homesteader, Instagram outfits. And the guy made a video that was really, really poignant because him and his wife had moved out to an acreage, 10, 15 acres or whatever. And they start building their off-grid paradise. And they start realizing first and foremost, they don't have the money to build the off-grid paradise and B, how much work it is.
Yeah.
And this guy starts cluing in. He's like, I'm going to work every day. I'm working my 10 hours or whatever at the job. Then I'm coming home and I'm dealing with construction. I'm dealing with, putting in the garden, getting the food up, all that stuff. And then it dawns on him. He was like, what happens if I get hurt or I get sick? Now what? So all of a sudden he had this whole idea of self-sufficiency. And it, kind of the big awakening for him was self-sufficiency is a myth. It becomes from community. So right away he starts reaching out to neighbors and stuff like that. Like, hey, look, come help me with this. I'll help you with that. We get some bartering going on. All of a sudden now he's got, 15, 20 families all working towards the same goal. Yeah. And he's saying what we have now in, 4 or 5 years or whatever, I could have never achieved if I lived to be 150. I could have never achieved this level of resiliency on my own. It requires that community. But these are, I think, basic things. Like when our ancestors came and settled out here, you know, the people that already lived here knew this.
Yeah.
They knew that it took community. They knew that it took basic skills to survive.
Yep.
And then, you know, our ancestors came up here and they learned, you know, hey, I got a plot of land. It's unbroken. There's no house there. There's no nothing. You know, you're going to have to learn all these skills. If somebody knows how to mill boards, well, fucking A, good for you.
Yeah.
Somebody knows some basic medicine, excellent. You know, that doctor in every town is a valuable asset.
Exactly.
Right? If you're the person who can hunt clean animals, who knows, you know, kind of what can get out there and learn from the indigenous, like what plants are edible, what mushrooms will, you know, fuck you up and which ones will kill you, which ones are good to eat, all that kind of stuff. Like these are lessons that were paid for in blood over hundreds of years.
Yep.
And all it takes is for the sun to get happy one day and knock out a whole bunch of our really weak, tenuous things to where all these skills are suddenly way more prevalent than we think they are. And letting them die, letting them go, like I said, one generation away is tantamount to like civilizational suicide.
You know, I've told people lots because that's exactly that picture that you just painted there. That's exactly what we're trying to achieve. And what is the worst case scenario with all this? You learn some skills and you have a closer knit community. You make some great friends of like-mindedness and you're enjoying stuff. You're eating better. You're living better. There's nothing negative about it. So, and you got less anxiety because you could take care of yourself. You know, my kids, I get it. I understand. Like my kids aren't involved in any of this. They just, and my one son.
The old man's crazy.
Yeah. My one son came to me and he said, you know, Dad, I understand what you're trying to do. But he says, I don't want to feel like I don't have a future. I don't want to feel that what I'm doing is a waste of time. He said, so I would rather not know what's going on in the world because I'm trying to build a life and I'm trying to build a future. I'm trying to build a family. You know, he told me, he said, your life is almost over. I'm like, holy shit, dude, ouch.
Asshole.
Oh, wow. And I get it because for me, like I was a fucking degenerate into my mid-20s. I was probably better off dead than alive in a large portion of my life. Fortunately, that didn't happen. I managed to get my shit together. But the moment I had something, the moment I had a relationship with somebody that mattered to me more than anybody else had mattered at that point, the moment I saw myself starting to build a life, and it's probably coincides with, you know, being a male and you're in the mid-20s, your brain is finally fully developed, that's when all this stuff started to make sense. Because it doesn't matter when it's just you. When you're out there trying to slay dragons and build your empire and do conquest because you're a young man, fucking A, get after it, young son. Like, do it. Yep. But there is going to come a time once you have something, once you achieved something, you're going to go, how do I defend this? Somebody can come and take this from me if they want to. Or the government can take it from me. Or some fate of the stars or the cosmos or whatever. You know, we're on a rock flying through space or whatever. All kinds of shit can happen. Tomorrow isn't promised. And you start looking at that, and it's not an anxiety, but those little skills you have, like it's just, you know, like you say, getting dropped off in the bush, going camping. Can you make a fire? Can you make shelter? Do you know how to find water? You know, all those basic things. Those are force multipliers because it's not just for you. Right? If you can preserve food, you can preserve food for many people. Yeah. Right? If you can build shelter, you can build shelter not just for yourself, but for many people. Yeah. These are force multipliers. It's not just keeping you alive. It's keeping the people you care about alive. Exactly. And maybe your neighbor too, because maybe your neighbor's laid up for some reason, or maybe other people you care about. Right? And it's, well, people are like, oh, I don't want to end up in that situation where I don't want to be a leader. I don't want to be the person who stands up and does whatever it takes. Well, guess what? If you don't want to be that guy, then you will be ruled over by the guy who does. There's a huge chunk of this world that's run by some pretty vicious warlords because they're the guy who showed up. Yeah. Right? And that's just the way the world works. The world is run by those who show up.
Mm-hmm.
You know, be it the guy who raises his hand in local town council, or be it the guy who decides to like strap up and take over a small part of Africa.
Well, I think that's where the saying comes from. They mean to rule well, but they mean to rule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it is what it is, and it's kind of it's an interesting perspective when people feel like preparedness of any sort is kind of like, oh, I don't want to think about the end times, or like for me it's more of a comforting thing, and not that I'm not the greatest prep. I know what I can bring to the table.
Mm-hmm.
I have my skill sets that that's what I try and bring, but to me it's just more comforting. It's not like I don't look at it as a burden where I'm like, oh God, I have to do this so that I'm useful. Like I look at it more of a it's more comforting for my friends, my family. Like, hey, at least they know that they can count on me, and if shit doesn't work out for them, oh, you know what, I got you.
Yeah.
Like it's that kind of.
When we first started doing this with Barry and Shane, they brought some writings from Bosnia when they served over in Bosnia.
Yeah.
I think you have a copy of that.
I do, yep.
Yeah, it was very interesting because, like you were saying earlier, societies are very fragile. And you don't really realize how fragile it is until something comes apart. And when they served over in Bosnia, like the government kept telling them, like, it's all good, everything's good, no problem, nothing to see here. And then it was overnight, boom, it was chaos. And within 3 days, people were looting. Within 3 weeks, like there was women that were trading their bodies for a can of Spam to feed their kids. There was men getting killed over stupid things like a Bic lighter. You didn't trade or anything during the day. Money meant nothing.
Yep.
Skills meant something, and things of survival meant something.
Yep.
And antibiotics, stuff like that. That is what had value. Food, but money meant nothing. Ammunition and firearms and community that stuck together. The lone wolves were the ones that all died. Yeah. The ones that stuck together because they had family members or other community members that were wanting to protect themselves, they survived. But I've got the writings of some people, local people that went through that, what it was like. And man, when you read that story, it is an eye opener, and we are not exempt from that here.
No.
And not at all. And I would like to hope that it would never happen. One part of me believes it won't, but another part of me is like, nah.
Man, I'm not really a pessimist. I'm a realist for sure, but it's kind of like you watch what's happening in some of our bigger cities, and I don't want to like throw spears at the government, but I will. Like how much? I guess you could edit it out, but like when you look at the mass immigration where we're importing the third world. No, really, like they're battling it out in the streets of our big cities where you have these warring factions now.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, like these people fucking hate these people, but here we are, we're like the dumb, like, let's take one scoop of this and one scoop of that and see how it works out. And it's like, it's not,
this is the history of humanity.
Right. It's just not hard to imagine.
Those people know how to survive.
Right.
Yeah.
They know how to survive in a very hostile, tenuous, resource depleted society.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
They come here where it's rich. It's a fat land.
Target-rich environment.
I mean, if you've ever watched Scarface, he said, this town's one big pussy waiting to get fucked. That's the way they see it. Yeah. They see a place where infractions on the law aren't enforced with violence. They see a society that's basically disarmed. Mm-hmm. They see something that's built on good faith and paper laws. And for them, that means nothing, right? Because they come from a place where all that failed a long, long time ago. And they know how the world really works. Mm-hmm. And they have no problem coming to a place like this and running how they know the world works. So, it's not their fault. It's our fault. Like we're the ones who are sitting here in La La Land trying to order another Frappuccino off of your phone to get it delivered to your house, right?
Right. And that's why I don't think it's a big stretch to like things could get fucked up in a hurry. Like it's not out of the realm of possible that you'll get caught in that crosshair, or that those warring factions will escalate it to the point where suddenly it looks just like the stories out of Bosnia. We're
Mhm.
like, oh shit!
I
We
think
have these two tribes warring at it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think
And
for us
now-
it's a pretty small minority. Like when you're talking about Bosnia, that's
Sure.
that's an entrenched religious dispute that went on for a long
Yeah.
time. I think for us, we're seeing a lot of things in the news where it's a bit of a tempest in a teapot.
Yeah.
You're seeing small groups in small localizations in
Mhm.
these urban centers where they're fighting it out. I don't think those things have the critical mass to really spill over even citywide, maybe not
Yeah.
nationwide.
Oh, but I certainly think on the smaller scale, like if you look at the reports of like Jews being lynched in the Netherlands yesterday or the day before, and you're like, okay, like
Yeah, there's another side to that story too.
sure there is 100%. I'm just saying like that's the headline, but it's like, okay, however that whole thing breaks out, whatever side this and that, just being a regular guy who happens to live in one of those neighborhoods, and now your neighborhood is shut down for 3 days while people are like trying to fucking kill each other. Like,
Yeah, well, I think
preparedness still matters. Like you still,
and that's that tight community, right?
Yeah.
If you start caring about who your neighbor is,
Mhm.
and you start caring about your neighborhood, right? If you start caring enough about your own life and maybe how the people around you are living, this is the counter to this. Because I met some people who are new Canadians. I met this guy from Jamaica. He's driving truck, and he'd come in. I don't know if I told the story before. He'd come into Canada and Ontario, and he'd driven truck in Jamaica, and he was driving truck in Ontario, and he just hated it. And him and his wife and his couple of kids absolutely hated Ontario. So he heard about Edmonton,
Mhm.
and he'd heard about Alberta. So, saves his money, does his thing, gets another job, driving truck in Alberta. And I'm like, well, how do you like Edmonton? He's like, well, it's better than Toronto, but I still hate it. He's like, I'm like, I want to live. He's like, my goal is to get a piece of land up northwest of Edmonton.
Mhm.
My own land where I can have my chickens, where I can have, and I'm just laughing because I'm like, this guy comes through and he's like, Jamaican is the day is long, but he's after the same thing I am,
Mhm.
right? He's seeing the same thing that I am, and he's looking at it and going, oh, I can do this here.
Mhm.
I can go and I can be, self-sufficient, or at least outside of that chaos of the urban world. And I think there's a lot of people that come here specifically to Alberta. I think there's a lot of people coming here now.
yeah.
And are you seeing that in your groups? Are you seeing new Alberta, like people
Yes.
new to the area?
Yeah, I do. I more and more all the time, because it's probably the safest place in the whole entire world. It's got everything.
Yep.
There's really, like I said earlier, there's really no threats. So if you were going to pick a place, if you lived anywhere in Canada and you were to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go to someplace safe.
Yeah, the Peace Country's pretty solid.
And what is there between us and the Arctic Ocean? Nothing. Really.
Yeah.
We're at the end of the world. So, yeah, if I was in Ontario, I'd pick here. Hands down, I would.
Yep.
But, it's...
But
But
if I was just
have
a
you guys
regular
seen
Jamaican dude, this is where I'd pick too.
the Canadian government's, it was done by Horizon Canada, I believe, or something like that. And it's a threat assessment, 2024 threat assessment for Canada. Did you guys read that yet or anything?
Oh, I've heard about it. I haven't read it though.
It's actually kind of neat. If you take a look at some of the threats, well, one, World War, it's a very high probability, not high probability, high in impact, but like between 2 and 3 for probability. Civil War in the United States is on there. But what's really high on both of them is the world being run by billionaires. That's actually in the freaking threat assessment of Canada's threat assessment. The world being run by billionaires. I'm like, it already is.
Who's billionaires though? Apparently that's the deal, right?
Talking about,
Yeah, one billionaire steps out of line, all of a sudden it's a threat.
right?
But it's actually a
Elon.
really interesting read, because you can see the threat even of cyber attacks taking out critical infrastructure was one of them. That was high on both of them.
Oh, absolutely.
And they suspected that one could happen in a 2 to 3 year period.
Yeah, I can see that. I think that the more that society relies on the internet
Mhm.
and that as a critical piece of infrastructure to control things, like it's all wired into our dams, our power stations. Everything is run off on the grid, and it's all hackable. And so I think it's a
From
high
the gas
probability.
pumps to the freezers in your
man.
supermarket, man.
It is
So-
what it is.
Now, if you think about it this way, for the election that just went on, Trump gets in, and they did not want Trump in.
No.
Everybody knows that. Now,
but he won.
If you were the
Spectacular
puppet
fashion.
master, one of the puppet masters pulling the puppet strings, and Trump gets back in, would you just allow him to run his 4 years? And
Nah, I think it's going to be a fuck show.
it's going to be a fuck show. You're going to fuck with him every freaking opportunity you get because you don't want him to achieve his goals, because his goals advancing thwart your goals of world domination.
Yeah.
So they are going to do everything they possibly can. So I wouldn't doubt it if there's all of a sudden, cyber attacks or other things, the pandemic that was in his first administration. Yeah. You keep him so freaking busy mitigating problems that he can't focus on the economy. I think it's going to be an absolute freaking gong show. And I think that it's all going to be put forth by freaking all the ones pulling the strings.
Yeah. Well, I think the best thing that a lot of people don't realize is that all planning is done by people. It's executed by people, and people are fallible. Mm-hmm. There's been a lot of people who tried to conquer the world in the history of the worworld. Some made a lot of inroads. Nobody ever succeeded. It all fell apart. That's the history of the world, right? That people have tried, and they had big motivations and a lot of assets to do it, and they failed. I think that I'm a Christian. I see there's a bigger power, and there's a bigger power at play, and I think when we look at these things, I don't like to look at it as this part's controlled and this part's not, right? If something happens that I don't like, it's not necessarily because that some adversarial force made it happen. Mm-hmm. And if something happens that I do like, it doesn't mean that the good guys won. Mm-hmm. Because if all things are equal, then each one of those things was as likely supposed to happen as the other, right? So I think when people look at the situation now and they say, well, there's a pushback against this thing. Well, what if the pushback is engineered for some reason? Mm-hmm. What if that's part of getting to the next goalpost?
Very possible.
I think so, because I think the whole with Trump, peace through strength. I think they're going to make him prove it.
Yeah, and I don't think I just don't think that. I think that there are people that plan. Mm-hmm. I think that there's very, very powerful people on this planet who have a lot of wealth, a lot of control. There's a section of this population on this planet that live in a way that most people can't imagine. Mm-hmm. Right? I've said this before. There are multiple companies that build super yachts. These things are the size of a small town.
Yep.
Right? And there's multiple companies. So who's buying all these fucking super yachts?
Yeah.
That means there's people that own islands, right? Mm-hmm. They personally have the GDP of a small nation.
Yep.
Right? They live a lifestyle that we couldn't possibly comprehend, and they can get together and they can talk about how the world, but a lot of them are fucking idiots.
Well, sure, and I think conversely, the counter side of that is the farmer who can grow beans, right?
Exactly.
Like that motherfucker.
Exactly.
He can buy a yacht, and he can he's got billions of dollars to do whatever, but he doesn't understand the basic principles of how to live.
Exactly.
What it takes to actually
sooner or later
sustain life.
I could trade that bag of beans for that yacht. Yeah. If they're hungry enough.
Yeah, exactly. Well, what really matters, right?
Exactly.
Do we get wrapped around the axle about whether the fucking Vatican has alien bodies in their fucking basement?
Yeah.
Or do we worry about, hey, look, I'm going to go get an elk this year. Mm-hmm. You've got a couple 100 pounds of potatoes. Let's talk.
Yep.
Right? Or you've got some skills, or maybe we can just get together and we can talk about what's bothering us, and maybe build some community, and then maybe we aren't so likely to be manipulated by media, by all this stuff that's happening, because I know that, hey, look, I don't necessarily know what's happening on the other side of the world, but I know that my neighbors are with me. We're on the same page. We've got access to medical. We got access to food. We got access to transportation. And if my furnace goes out in minus 25 weather at 2:00 in the morning, I don't have to freak out. I actually can phone somebody or call somebody because I know somebody now.
That because you just mentioned the medical, the workshop that we just did for that trauma med class, we had 40 people that were sitting through the workshop because it was just kind of a precursor to the class.
That's wild.
40 people
That's
that
awesome.
wanted to take it. Yeah, we did one for firearms as well and stuff, and we had probably about 20, 25 people in that one as well.
Excellent.
Yeah. So, people that are interesting. So you guys' PAL courses are going to be full, just so you're aware.
Oh, that's good, man.
But, one thing I find it is something for us to try and mitigate with these courses and stuff that we've been doing is we do get the odd people that come in and they're all talk about, gotta overthrow the government and gotta this and that. And I'm like, yeah, I don't even want to hear any of that bullshit.
They're just feds. It's okay.
Yeah. So I'll try and talk to them about, if you want to be the biggest pain in the ass to any government, just don't need them for anything. Just don't need them.
Yeah.
You don't have to go fight anything. Just prepare yourself and not need them for nothing. You're the biggest threat.
Yep.
And this whole ideology that some freaking guys have that, we got to go fight, got to fight. Bullshit. All they're going to do is make an example out of you because you're a meat stick, and yet you should be made an example of. Because I know if I was, the powers that be, and somebody was doing that, I would make an example out of them. So you guys need to just pull the reins, focus on community, and make it all about that.
No, I agree 100%, because part of building community is ruling out the radicals. Like, what you don't need is some shit disturber in the ranks of, like...
Exactly.
It only takes one, man.
I'm really just trying to get some eggs here.
Yeah.
I'm not into, like, driving downtown with a truckload of guns and, like, blowing shit up. Like, I just need to feed my kids.
Yeah,
it's assets and liabilities, right? And I think when it comes down to these honest conversations, like when you're trying to communicate the kind of skills you guys are doing, it becomes pretty obvious who's on the ball, kind of who's on their square and who's not. Like, if all I care about is buying guns and ammo, but I'm not doing any sort of training with those things, or not getting any useful application out of those tools, but I'm not looking for how to water glass eggs or something like that. Like, those people show up right away. And I think that in any community is going to be a small proportion of people who are kind of off base in their thinking. And it's up to the community to kind of say, hey, look, you're way out there. We've probably all been there at some point where you got your Chicken Little hat on and the sky is falling and it's like, what do I do? But that's the thing, is the best thing to fight fear is knowledge. And what you guys are doing, teaching these courses, it abates fear and it makes people less susceptible to misinformation from the media, because they're not worried so much about what's happening in the day to day. Yeah, because they have what they need. They have the people around them that they need. They have skills that are hard skills that they can rely on, and there's a lot less anxiety in the world.
Exactly. Yep.
So where can people get in contact with you guys for this stuff?
Well, we're trying to get things a little bit tightened up to do it all through the Parallel Society. Right now, they can go on to Facebook to Community Homesteading and Preparedness, and we post up everything in there that we're doing. But we are trying to get it easier where everybody can just go on to that Parallel Society page, and I'm not sure about the landing page because I don't think she's got it set up yet, where all the courses and classes are going to be sorted up through there. Okay. And people can look and go through that. So, it might be something that you're able to announce for us at a later date when we get that nailed down.
Oh, absolutely. Sure. I'd love to.
Yeah. But, but it's been growing so fast. Like, it's growing faster than we are technologically, because we're just a bunch of hillbillies.
And well, I get it too, because even our small part of it, the firearm stuff, like, god damn, like, it's like when we listed our classes for the 2024 season, within 10 days, we were like 60% sold.
Yeah.
And Mike and I are looking at each other we're like, what the fuck? Like, we don't have enough time. Like, we don't have enough dudes. Where do we get the time, energy, and everything out? I
think this year you're going to be full fast too.
Yeah, man, it's crazy. It's awesome to see it growing. And again, we're just one small piece of it, because that's what we can bring to the table. But so what other? Do you have any? What's coming up for 2025? Like, is there any key classes that you want people to be aware of, like in specific areas,
Well,
or anything you got cooking that's kind of on the down low that
nothing on the down low. There's some stuff that we're working on right now. We're actually going to redoing a trauma med class, more advanced than just first aid.
Yep.
And that we're going to be doing that in the winter time as well. And those are actually, they're fun as fuck. I really like those. Yeah. You know, you really get to get in there and learn some really good life-saving skills, because that stuff I think is a necessity. And why use up the time in the summertime when you could be doing the outside stuff? And so we'll 100%. Try and do that one. That'll be next. But as for the other ones, there's nothing new that we have discussed yet that we're doing, but we're open to ideas. And we're actually, Ryan developed a tablet program on his tablet. And he hands the tablet around and he asks people on that, they can fill out this profile what they would like to see for courses and list it from 1 to 5 and importance and stuff. And then, so we've actually collected that data, and we're going to be going over that data and seeing, all right, what classes do we focus on next? Because that's an indication of what people are really wanting for stuff. So, and after I do those other talks and stuff with those other groups, we'll get feedback from them as well, and try and develop more. So it's still quite new in conception, and it's moving along, but
it seems like it's been building momentum through the years here. It seems like
has.
You and I have had some discussions in the shop and out at your place, and we're talking about things, and it's like, and this and this and this. It used to be, hey, this is on the horizon. Like in August, we're talking about this. And now it seems like there's something happening every week or every other week where there's just more and more. So it's building momentum.
It's kind of scary, to be honest with you. It is a bit scary because, I wasn't prepared for this. Yeah. And we're not making any money on this.
Oh, I get it.
You guys know, because
we know all the about courses, not making money. Look at all this brand new steel that we just lost.
If people actually understood,
you do it for the love
of the community that it goes into it. There's a lot of time, a lot of effort, and a lot of expense that you just don't get back. But again, you're creating assets. Yep. And reducing liabilities. That's really what building a community is about as well. So.
Yeah, everything you can do for yourself, the state or your neighbors don't have to do for you. Yeah, and like I said, you become that force multiplier. Yeah. About what kind of price range these courses run? Like, you're basically just paying instructors and logistics costs?
Yeah, instructors and logistic costs. So each course is a little bit different. I used to do it at $50 a person, but it was costing me a lot of money. Yeah. So, because I would make up the deficits and stuff, and I can't afford that. So, we're probably going to be $100 a person for whatever course it is, unless it's like a 2 or 3 day CPP course or something like that. That's 3 or 4 days. Then we'll be more. Yeah. But even that we're changing the CPP course to be something a little different, because Barton's has got all the firearm stuff taken care of. Sure. And you guys are doing a great job with that.
Just to be clear, CPP, is that close personal protection?
No, community protection and preservation.
Okay.
And preparedness, or we started out preservation, then we just changed
two different CPP things in my head then. Okay.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, but anyways, and we're going to be changing that to be more on how a community works together to be successful in all different kind of entities, even down to risk assessment of your properties and stuff, and how people can do a risk assessment of their property or a risk assessment of a community or a community plan on how, if. And again, we're going into worst case scenario. If there's a fallen society and people are in their community, and how are you going to protect your community of a 10-mile circle type of thing? Yep. There should be a plan with that. Whether you dig up roads or just put up checkpoints and whatever, if people need to at least have these discussions to be able to be successful in it later.
Generally speaking, what yields the best results is if you look at the worst case scenario and then build backwards from there. What you can't do is it's really hard to engineer a plan from where are we at right now? And then, what if it's a little bit worse, little bit worse, little bit worse? It's easier to say if this is the absolute worst thing that can happen,
Yep.
like we're all gonna fucking die,
Yeah.
and then and then backwards plan from there, you actually get a better result.
Yeah.
Because then it just kind of helps you break down like this is the worst thing that can happen. How do we prevent it? And then you can kind of walk it back in steps, and then hopefully it never gets to that point because
Exactly.
you've already thought about that. So you kind of put these risk mitigation protocols in place so it doesn't get that far. So.
Yeah, and we try and do everything too, which is I'm very thankful for Barry that he wrote that book, No More Mr. Nice Guy.
Yeah.
Because everything that we teach and do has to be within the Criminal Code of Canada. Like nobody should ever go outside. That is our rule of law that we as a society have set up. And that is what we have to follow, even in a downturn society. You have a rule of law that you have to follow. You are not
100%.
outside the law. So, and to make sure those communities stay within that as well.
Yeah, no, those
So
kind of.
I'm learning a lot about criminal code and stuff. I tell you, but my gosh.
It's like, God damn it, I was trying to be a mechanic here.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, exactly.
You're trying to fix the whole world. What do you think you are, a welder?
Yeah.
Yep.
Ooh,
and you know, and
that's right.
If a person is teaching like that too, then you're out of the danger of being a group of extremists or whatever, you know,
for sure.
Because everything is within the Criminal Code of Canada. We don't go outside of it all.
Yeah, and that's the purpose of. One of the purposes of this podcast was to do some of this community connection stuff. Was to get people to come on here and talk about what they're doing, so that we can build community. Yeah, and we can talk about these things out in the open. Because A, that's how they're going to get the best benefit, and B, that's how we're going to fight against. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. State media in Canada, all media is state media. Yeah, if you listen to the local radio station, they're on the federal dime. You're getting news that's vetted through whatever ministry. That's the way it is. We're not going to control what we need to control. If we're not going to have the conversations, if we're not going to control our own information, then someone else is going to control it for us. Just like if you don't control your food, you don't control your security, someone else is going to step in and do it for you.
We are obviously not state sponsored.
Obviously
Free
not.
Range Media has no government affiliation.
No.
Yeah. But, you know, any of this stuff, it's fun as fuck too.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah,
I've enjoyed I've loved the people that I have met in this whole journey. Like everybody, Mike and Lucas and all, Ryan and Sam and all those guys, like they're really awesome, authentic, real, beautiful people. And I've just been loving it. And we learn a lot of fun things, do a lot of fun things. Yeah, I'm enjoying it.
Yeah. Well, I think that's the crux of community, right? Yep. Is when your community is healthy and functional, then things are fun. You want to do things, you want to get out there and you want to go hunting. You want to get out there and you want to harvest. You want to get out there and you want to celebrate that with the people that you care about. That's the sign of a healthy community. An unhealthy community is segregated inside, on screens, afraid of their neighbors, right? Afraid of the government, afraid of, whatever's going to happen because they're not in control. They have no resiliency. So they're easy to control. They're easily kind of picked apart. And doing stuff like what you're doing gives the community some level of resiliency and some level of strength, so that when bad things, the world is going to end for every single person on this planet. Yeah, and that might be the day you get a medical diagnosis. It might be when somebody that you care about dies. It might be when your business goes under. It might be. I mean, for a lot of people, it's because the person they didn't want to win an election won an election. But because there's such low resiliency. If you're building up that basic stuff, if you've got community and the bad thing happens to you, your world ends, then you at least got people around you. Yeah. You've at least got a support system and you're not fighting it alone. Yeah. And that's one of the biggest things that I think we kind of wandered away from with, our instant gratification society and everything's a click away and everything is filtered through media. We kind of lost a lot of that. We lost that authenticity and we lost the things that people are obviously very hungry for coming to you guys for what you guys are doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Wild stuff.
Cool. Oh, yeah.
What's first? Fuck. We don't have a script, man.
No, we don't. But I've been reading these at the end of these things lately.
It used to be at the beginning.
But these conversations just kind of started and they keep rolling. So I'm kind of like doing these at the end now.
Dave's a poet, by the way, so he writes things.
Oh,
That's kind of
cool.
his thing.
The other reason for the podcast. What are you going to do with all the shit you wrote? No, if you never read it.
Strap in, folks.
This one's called A Trail West. It is rough-hewn and vague of form, but it will serve. The words are primitive, but genuine and honest. The act is brutal and violent, but we are still alive, and we will be so, inelegant and wild. New horizons dawn with every sunrise. Strange peoples welcome us to their lands. Never refined or adorned as they are in stately circles, we learn that extravagance is a sign of confinement. What can we make or barter for will clothe us? Animal skins do just as well as fine linens at keeping us covered, and some even better in the cold. We learn that plain speech is better understood than all the filigree and dialects so smugly prized by hangers-on of the lord and ladies back home. One misunderstood word can spark a fight or communicate bad instruction, leading to injury or death, or hurt feelings, or betrayed trust, none of which are welcome on this frontier. Out here, not even words are wasted. As we cut our path westward, we hear stories of strange oceans and giant beings, creatures that beggar the imagination, and fertile lands and mountains veined with gold. But we're not the same as we were when we started. We are better at hunting, better at defending ourselves, better at killing. For whatever evils this land breeds in its peoples, we brought with us evils greater by a score. We killed those who would raid our camps by nightfall, and dealt swift justice to those with us who would turn within the fold for prey. We no longer hesitate when threatened. We attack with skilled efficiency. Without violence, we might never reach our new home in the lands between the mountains and the sea. Already the land changes from plains to rolling hills, to the spires of earth's majesty before us, all the way to heaven. Father says that we must winter here. We will make the pass when spring comes. So now this house of rough-hewn logs will be our home until we press on once again. We too have become rough-hewn people, wild like the land we now call home.
Really cool.
Damn, I think we got to go back to opening with that, because now I got to transition. I feel like I'm Krusty the Clown. Like, hey, kids, you can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcast, CastBox. Be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Follow us on Instagram, X, Facebook, all the other shit. Check out our website at thegrayrange.com, where you can find every episode of the podcast, the blog, merch, such as shirts, Black Death Negative coming soon. Has to, man. That's fucking wild.
Yeah,
and
hats,
you can buy
shirts,
the
that kind
book
of stuff.
there, Amazon, etc. That's
For
the
sure.
wrap.
New collection, Whiskey Painted Holocaust, just came out. You can get it on Amazon.
Cool.
Ernie, thanks so much for coming.
Thank you for
This was
having
a
me.
really good
Appreciate you
time,
coming out,
man.
Yeah.
Wow. All right.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Cheers.